Hello and welcome to the Hidalgo Show. Today we're going to deal with the specifics of the laws of agency. I think that it's pretty clear based on what I see out on social media and what I see out in the world of journalism that people have a complete shutdown and an unbelievably off understanding of what's actually going on in the world and the reason why we all feel like we're being subjugated to something against our will. We're really not. It's a simple confusion, and it's all based on the law of agency. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to explain it in detail right after this. Alright, welcome to the Hidalgo Show. This is Rick, Tehijo Binya, and I do apologize for the cold. If you guys can tell that I have a cold, a little bit of a stuffy nose, but we're good, feeling great. It's just been really cold. But I want to go over this because this is really important, and it's so confusing to people because the United States and the various states all call their form of governance, they call it laws. Well, by calling it laws, they're making it very difficult to separate what is a real law and what is not a real law. And what is law to one may not be law to another. And it all has to do with what agency that you're operating in. That's what the law of agency is. It's a test that would be applied to determine what law form that you're operating for at any given time in order to determine what jurisdiction or what, whether you have standing in a particular jurisdiction, or if a jurisdiction even has standing to come and bother you. Okay, these are all very important questions. Nobody addresses these things. What people address is the principle of jurisdiction. Do you have subject matter jurisdiction? Do you have this kind or that kind of jurisdiction? That's what everybody keeps dealing with. But this is the real deal. This is where it all comes down to. You see, it really is this simple. Everything comes down to two worlds. There's the ways of the world and there's the ways of the Lord. Now, I've been saying that since the beginning of the House of Hidalgo show, before it became the current show, before we changed it to the Hidalgo show, way back. 2015 is when we started our blog talk show. And we've been saying this from the very beginning. And, I didn't know the laws of agency as good as I do now. But I'm telling you right now, this is really where the rubber hits the road. So if you get this, you can overcome anything. The scriptures tell us that we perish for a lack of knowledge. And, that verse makes all the world of sense to me, because I see it. I work with people who perish for their lack of understanding of what capacity they were operating in. So let's go through it, shall we? Let's start with the ways of the world, because this is what you're most familiar with. Okay? So you have a corporate fiction. Okay? A state is not a live person. Okay? A state is a fiction. It is a corporate fiction. Just as a nation is a corporate fiction. Alright, so don't get offended thinking, oh, this guy's one of those guys who think everything's a corporation. Well, yeah, there's a heck of a lot of things that are corporations that shouldn't be, and that's a problem. But let's just go down the list. Okay, so you've got corporate fiction. So here's how corporate fiction works. This is where they get their authority. Corporate fiction, the agreed to administrators of corporate fiction create law for their fictions or flesh and blood who love the ways of the world. They become agents. It's agency. Okay, so let's give you an example. You create a business called Microhack. Okay, I'm taking Microsoft and kind of playing around with it there. You call it Microhack. Microhack Incorporated. Now you file that, you register that with the United States as a corporation under the United States, okay, which has its own set of corporate law. So the agreed to administrators, which are who? Congress, right? Congress, and actually all the branches, not just Congress, not just the legislators, if you will, but also the courts. They enforce the contract. They enforce the agreement. Okay, so these Congress people, they create laws which in their mind make sense or need to be made in order to control a corporation, a corporate fiction of some sort, okay, in order to bring it into submission so it doesn't go and do things that society doesn't want it to do. Now, I mean, it's miserably failed. Monsanto is a great example of a corporation that does whatever it wants to do, so, it doesn't work. Okay, but we're not really debating whether it works or not. I'm just showing you how it works. So, but they can also govern people, flesh and blood. They can. Okay, because if you contract into it, if you decide that you love the idea of being a U.S. Lowercase c citizen, which is an improper noun, which is a diminishing of rights, by the way. Okay, it's not. Read the original Constitution, and you'll never find the words United States citizen. Okay, it's always capital C, citizen of the United States. Okay, so it's very important that we understand these things, that we see the differences, and we understand English and grammar. But understand that a corporate fiction like the United States has a set of laws. They call them laws to make this thing a little bit more easy to understand. We're going to call them state codes. We're going to call them U.S. code. Okay? Because I think there really is only one law in the world. And maybe I'll explain that later. Or maybe on a different show. I don't know. But we're going to call it U.S. codes or state codes. Okay? Now, the flesh and blood people who by consent, evidenced by action, choose to be governed by laws of a corporate fiction. The end goal of a secularized society with no need for God. That's the end goal. The end goal is a secularized society with no need for God. Where have we seen this before? Was there not a tower built in Babel for the purpose of going up and destroying God? That was the very purpose of Nimrod. This Babylonian system still exists today in trying to replace God's law with a different form of law that doesn't necessitate a God. Everything in our society has been moving steadily towards needing no God. Okay? The law itself has become God. There I went using the word law, but the code itself has become God. Okay? So, the laws of the corporate fiction replace the Torah, and law-abiding is defined as obedient to the laws of the corporate fiction. So when someone says, I'm a law-abiding lowercase c citizen, what they're saying is, I obey the laws of the United States. I obey the laws of West Virginia. I obey the laws of Florida. I obey the laws of South Dakota. I obey the laws of Nebraska. See what I'm saying? That's what they're saying. Now, they're respecting those laws because those laws are stone in their mind. They are God. If you don't obey them, you go to jail. Right? So everybody's fear is. It's a fear-mongering system because the law has become God. Now, watch this. How would you enter into such a system? Okay, there's a couple ways. First way is one registers their property with a nation or state in compliance with the laws of the corporate fiction. Now listen closely. What happened when you were born? Your parents registered the birth in compliance with the laws of a corporate fiction, right? In other words, the laws of the United States, as far as they were concerned, said that they had to register. But on closer examination, is there such a law? Is there such a law that mandates someone has to do that? There really isn't. It does exist, but it's not speaking to flesh and blood people who are part of the ways of the Lord. They can operate differently. We'll get into that a little bit later. You see, when you operate in a capacity pursuant to a law form, you are volunteering to become part of that law form. Here's another way you can enter. You don't just have to, not just registering your property, although we've registered land, we've registered cars, we've registered, apparel. I mean, I've seen where people registered all their jewelry. They registered everything. How do you say, somebody says, well, how do you register your jewelry? Well, it's really easy. You have a living will. Do you have a will or a last will and testament? If you do, and you registered that with the state, who governs the transaction after you've passed away? The court. They pull you in and they say, hey, this is according to the laws of the state of so-and-so. Okay? So don't tell me you can't register your goods, because you can. There's many ways to do it. Here's another way. One signs a contract, covenant, agreement, statement, or any other instrument pursuant to the law of a corporate fiction. I want you to do something. The next time you decide that you're going to play fantasy football, I don't know if you guys do that or not, but a lot of people are really into these fantasy football leagues. Okay? I'm using this because this is a really particularly stupid one, but believe it or not, it actually applies. When you play fantasy football, okay, you have to click a little box that says, I agree to the terms and conditions of Yahoo or Google or Sports Illustrated or wherever you're playing it. Okay? You check this little box that says, I agree to the terms and conditions. Anybody ever read those terms and conditions? Well, of course not. Of course we don't. Because we're like, oh, whatever. I'm just going to play the game. Or you go to download new software online, right? And a box pops up and it says, I agree with the terms and conditions. You gotta check it or else it won't let you download it. So out of convenience, we're like, well, man, the only way I'm gonna get to download it is I gotta check the box. Guess what the terms and conditions say? Pursuant to the laws of the state of so-and-so. So, if a situation ever arose where it was misused, or there was a concern that you might be misusing it, guess what they could do? They can pull you into court, and guess what? You just provided the evidence, which is what I'm about to get into, evidence of the fact that you're operating in a U.S. capacity, a corporate capacity, an agent to the United States. Because when you sign pursuant to, you're saying I'm an agent of. Let me give you another example. You register your kids for school, right? They make you fill out a bunch of paper now. Well, not me, because I figured out how to do it. But most people have to fill out a bunch of paper, including vaccination information and all kinds of junk. What's on every one of those papers that you're signing? Pursuant to South Dakota codified law. Pursuant to Florida law. Pursuant to Vermont law. Right? Every one of them have it on there somewhere. And if it doesn't, it makes a reference to where you can go find the law. Okay? When you sign that pursuant to or under the penalties of, guess what you're doing? You're becoming an agent, and you as an agent are incurring all liability, surety. We are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Okay? We have to think before we do. We have to stop thinking that we need everything right away. And instead of buying a piece of software online and hitting the I agree with the terms and conditions, contact the software company and tell them that you want the software, but that you want to waive any liability against them. Okay, and they probably have a form that says that you waive your right to sue them in any way, and they don't make you agree to any terms and conditions. Because all that is a liability issue for them. See, it's all part of the same game. These tentacles of this octopus, this Babylonian presumptivism that I keep talking about. So let's talk about evidence. What evidence is there that you have decided to be an agent for a state, a nation, a corporate fiction? Well, a certified document pursuant to any law of the corporate fiction signed by you. So, have you ever opened a bank account? Does the bank account say pursuant to the laws of so-and-so? Did you sign it? Did you sign it correctly? So that there would be no confusion as to what laws that you functioned under. You see? Everywhere those tentacles are. Everywhere. There is a way to handle your business. We'll get to that in a minute. Evidence. An identification card, identifying license, or any other instrument issued pursuant to the laws of the corporate fiction, and etc. So, you get pulled over because your light isn't working in the back of your car. And according to your state statutes, that's a violation, safety violation, and you're charged $75. I'm just making that up, but $75. The guy pulls you over and he says to you, the first question he asks you is, do you know why I pulled you over? Okay? What's the first thing you do? Most people, first thing they do, no officer, why'd you pull me over? Okay? You just accepted their solicitation, right? You just started a conversation with them. And you have not upfront told them anything. You have not explained your capacity. You've not told them what law or what agency you're operating in. Nothing. All you did was accept their solicitation. Please tell me, what did I do wrong? You see, we are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. We don't understand how to govern ourselves. Now, let's look at the ways of the Lord. By the way, I want to deal with one other thing real quick before I get there. Vaccinations. I saw a story, one of my dear friends on Facebook. I've never met before in my life, but I think she's from New Jersey. My dear friend, I call her a dear friend because, she's always liking my stuff, and it's great to have somebody that likes your stuff. So that's my friend as far as I'm concerned. You like my stuff, you're my friend. So this lady, she posted a thing about vaccinations, and it was talking about how the state was considering getting rid of religious exemptions for vaccinations. So the warning was going out, hey everybody, pay attention. And I saw all these people responding to that post, and they were like, we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight. We'll fight it. We're not gonna let this happen. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to recognize something, okay? Stop fretting and worrying about this stuff. I'm going to explain to you why it's so ridiculous to worry about how the corporation decides that they're going to, whether they're going to mandate within their own code to allow a religious exemption. Is who cares? Who cares? Here's why. The Constitution is an instrument that is directly affiliated with the real law. Real law. Talking about the Torah, God's law. How do I know that? Because the Declaration of Independence says very clearly it advocates the laws of nature and of nature's God. Well, here's the deal. The framers of the Constitution would not ratify the Constitution fully until there were some amendments that made it clear some self-evident truths. The very first amendment that they cleared, it was very easily cleared, by the way, nobody disagreed with it, was the one that said, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pull that up. Okay. First Amendment. See, I've searched it so much. There it is. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So, can Congress say that religious exemptions can no longer be? Can they even say that you can have a religious exemption? Isn't an exemption mean that you would normally be obligated, but these guys aren't because they have an exemption? Well, so the word exemption itself doesn't qualify under religion. It's more of an exception. It's a religious exception. Congress shall make no law, zero, none, not a tax law, nothing, zero, no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Duh. What are we worried about? How do you exercise freely your right? How? Well, it's self-evident. You operate it. Simple. But we don't know how to. This is what I'm going to go into right now. So let's go into the ways of the Lord. Yahuwah Elohim. Okay? Yahweh Elohim, the creator of the universe, gives his law to his people. So his people are his agents. That's agency, folks. Simple. I should be able to stop right there and everybody get it. Secondly, okay, what is that law? His law was delivered through the Torah, the prophets, all the way through, okay, the whole Old Testament and the New. That is his law. It's the law. The New Testament is literally a mere reflection of the Torah. There is no difference. New Testament constantly refers back to the Torah, in principle and in name. Now, flesh and blood people who by consent, evidenced by action, and by the way, please take note, evidenced by action. Everything we do must have an action that proves who we are. Evidenced by action, okay? Don't be handing them a form that's pursuant to the laws of so-and-so, of Rhode Island, and it's signed, and then say, but I am an agent of the Lord. No, you're not. You're an agent of the state, obviously. Okay? Don't do that. Flesh and blood people who by consent, evidenced by action, choose to be governed by the laws of the Torah and the New Testament. That's who they are. That's who I am. That's who we are. I hope. The end goal is a godly society which yearns for the things of the Lord, right? Do you yearn for the things of the Lord? Do you want the ways of the Lord? Do you want that? I do. That's what I yearn for. So that is the end goal of that society, to be there and to experience the Shekinah glory of God, right? To be right there in His midst. The laws of Yahuwah, I gotta say this right. The laws of Yahuwah Elohim are self-evident. They're self-evident, right? Yeah, let me tell you how they're self-evident. Let me just give you, let me give you an idea. Okay. The United States decides that they're going to pass a law that says that the sun is cold and everybody should plant their crops in the winter because the sun is cold. Climate change has frosted the sun over, and we're no longer able to sustain ourselves, so everybody needs to plant winter crops. Okay, because it's actually going to be warmer in the summer than it is in the winter. Okay, and don't tell me the United States isn't capable of passing something as stupid as that. All right, but anyway, I purposely picked a really stupid one because I want to tell you, it's self-evident. You can observe, you can feel the sun has heat, right? Okay, so if anybody ever tried to pass a law stating differently, we know it's self-evident that the sun provides heat and that spring is the best time to plant. Why? Because that's when the plants come back, right? It's self-evident. We don't need a law to tell us any different. Okay, it's self-evident. Let me give you some other self-evident things that are a little bit more controversial. It's self-evident that I get to raise and teach my kids as I see fit through the Torah. And that the state, Department of Education, all the different parts of the state have no obligation, hands off. Sorry, Hillary, it doesn't take a village. So, let me give you another one. I have the freedom to travel across this world, and I don't need the permission of anybody to walk, ride, function a motor vehicle down the road. An automobile. I don't need that. Why would you need that? You surely need to learn how to operate it correctly, but if something happens, who's liable? Right? I'm liable. Does that change suddenly because, is there some other kind of self-evident thing going on here? No, it's self-evident that I am liable for the actions that I take. All right, and that if the Lord tells me go to Antioch, then my responsibility, my obligation is to go to Antioch any way that I possibly can. Plane, train, automobile. All right, those are absolutely self-evident rights. I have the right of self-determination. I can self-determine what agency I'm operating in moment by moment. All right? I have chosen that with 99.9 of my life percent, it's going to be the laws of Yahuwah Elohim. Okay? That's what I've determined. Everything I do is for that reason. Now, how do you enter the contract of the ways of the Lord? Well, easy. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. This is not complicated. One confesses their sin and transgressions and operates in obedience to the Lord, to the laws of the Torah and the New Testament. Duh! It's not that hard. You know, some people might consider it a little less fun. I personally love it. I love it. I love it. Totally. Man, I totally love it. So, how do you evidence it? Okay, this is the key. Evidence. This is the key. Alright? Families. By the way, I'm doing a family government study right now on this show. Okay, I just took a break from it to do this because this is totally relevant to the study I'm doing. A record in the family Bible or an immersion document pursuant to the laws of the Torah and the New Testament. Right? To walk in obedience with the Lord means to what? What was his first thing that he did, right? When the power came upon him, the power of his Father came upon him, what was the first thing he did, right? He was immersed. He had understanding and he was immersed. Alright? And record it in your family, in the Bible, in files, you know? Do it. And when the world wants to prove that you're an American, use your files, use your records to prove it. Not theirs. Not anything pursuant to the state of Rhode Island or whatever. And here's another one. An identification card provided by one's family, tribe, or house, which notices the functioning capacity. Let me give you that same scenario I gave you earlier. You were pulled over. The officer asked you the first question out of his mouth. Do you know why I pulled you over? Well, officer, I actually don't know why you pulled me over, but I do need to tell you that any transaction that takes place between us, you're the surety for, and I need you to see my identification card, because the identification card is going to say that you're part of the ecclesia. You're part of the Lord's family, and that this is the agency that you're operating in. That you have freedoms. That your freedoms shall not be infringed. There can be no law. Let's go back there for a second. Can you infringe the freedom of somebody who's operating in a capacity under the Lord as his ambassador? Let me ask you this. What happens when somebody gets in the way of an ambassador of the United States who's trying to do business in, say, Russia or China or whatever? Man, they're on him like a hot pancake. Like syrup on a hot pancake. They're all over him. Okay? All over him. What do you think? How much more does an ambassador of the Lord Jesus Christ, how much more is he all over? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, why is it important? Why do I keep going back to the Constitution? Did they really have to put that in there for it to be self-evident? No. But they did. Why? Because they thought one day, you never know, these not-so-brilliant socialist Democrats from New York, anyway, I just had a teaser for a moment. These not-so-brilliant people are going to one day probably miss it. And they did. They don't get it. But it's enforceable. So identification card provided by one's family, tribe, or house, which notices the functioning capacity. Now, I've showed you the ways of the world. I've showed you the ways of the Lord. I've showed you how they work. I've showed you how you enter them. I've showed you how you evidence them. Now, what's the practical application? How does one secure themselves as a ambassador for Jesus Christ? And where do they even get that from in the scripture? right? 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 20. Pretty simple. I'm a new creature. What do new creatures have? They have names, right? Do I still have my old name? Well, no, that's the old creature. What's my new creature? Well, in this case, I call myself Rick Dehijo Ben Yah. Why? Because the Lord said so. What does that mean? Or in my case, Dehijo is a different appellation of my last name. My last name naturally was Hidalgo, which means some son of something. Dehijo means of the sun. You see where I went there? So it's Rick. Rick's always been my name. I've been known as it since the very beginning. They used to call me Ricky Ricardo, because I go around singing in my diaper. Okay, so Ricky Ricardo. That's what they called me. So Rick has always been my name. It's been what I've been called from the beginning. So Rick Dehijo of the Son Ben Yah. What does that mean? Son of God. I am one of the sons of God, an heir to the throne, an ambassador of Jesus Christ, a minister of reconciliation. That's what I am. That's what I do. Everybody who works with me is going to have to do it too. Okay? Because I don't mix the ways of the world with the ways of the Lord. I keep them separated. And I would ask that you consider doing the same. Now, practical application. Most of us who would listen to this broadcast are a member or even leadership of a church. Our churches have been destroyed also for a lack of knowledge. They've become instruments of the state, given a tax code called the 501c3. This is a tax code that's very easy to disassemble, very easy to move away from. A lot of times reorganizing is the best answer. And once you've reorganized, you can actually set up your church to be its own mini embassy for the Lord. And your people can be liberated and freed from the oppressions of this world. It's a fact. But you have to work together. You have to be a family. You have to be a community. Because enforcement does take a village. But raising a child does not. God gives us our gifts because He entrusts us to do our very best with them. Okay? Now, He entrusted me with 6. That's a major responsibility. And I hope I'm doing a halfway decent job. But that's between the Lord and me, because He gave me those gifts. He gave me those arrows to put in my quiver. And I am to raise them according to the ways of the Lord, not the ways of the world. And if the ways of the world want to guide me down a specific path of education that I believe is repugnant to the ways of the Lord, it is my responsibility, my duty to walk away from it. And to say to the ways of the world, jump off a bridge. It's my duty. So you see why I do what I do. Those of you who know about my wrestling ministry, also now you probably understand fully where I'm coming from. I am separating the ways of the Lord from the ways of the world. And I'm telling you right now, there is going to be massive freedom, massive ability to do things that other wrestling promotions can't do. And other churches can't do. Because they're tied in to the ways of the world through the 501c3. So, I hope this helps you. I didn't intend for it to be this long. I do apologize for that. If you're not a patron and you want to be, my Patreon information is on the bottom of the screen. Just go there, donate as little as $1 a month, and you'll get content that you'll have content available to you that others don't have. But I would encourage $5 level or more. The $5 level gets content that nobody else has seen that pertains to the laws of agency from a year or so ago. Otherwise, if you can't give, that's fine. Give in this way. Pass the word. Bring people to join the Hidalgo show. People who are like-minded, who want freedom in Christ. Bring them here. Show them the way. Share my videos. Help people to come to a place of realizing that their knowledge must increase, or they will continue to be destroyed. With that, I thank you all for coming. I bless all of you in your days. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I'll be with my assembly this weekend. Looking forward to it. And I'll see you again Monday for the next Hidalgo show. God bless you. Be at peace and stay safe. Like I say every time, everything we do here at the Hidalgo show is all about the blood.